plug them into Micromedics, see what comes up. You also have to look and see, are they on something like warfarin that we know interacts with pretty much everything? Is it a 3A4 inhibitor inducer substrate, or any of the other CYP450 enzymes? Those things should kind of be a red flag that says, hey, look at me, evaluate me further. But really, there's so many interaction checkers out there, it doesn't take long. And yes, most of our patients have, 13, 15 home medications. And
I've never run into a situation where I have reached the limit of number of drugs I can add into those searches either, so I don't know if there actually is.
Right.
I haven't reached that limit either.
I haven't either. But I think like when you start out, if you don't know what those drugs are that you needed to put in, go ahead and throw them all in and then see what it says after that. But you should start to develop what are I like to call my appies, tell them to come up with triggers. What are my trigger drugs? Kind of like warfarin or Bactrim or rifampin. Like those should be immediate red flags to say, I need to check because this drug is going to do some damage. So let me figure out what other drugs are going to be affected by this particular drug. So this drug has to stay into that interaction checker if you're still not sure where it's going to go. So over time you'll develop, or you should develop, what are your trigger drugs that you should be checking interactions for.
I think that's where your basic drug knowledge comes in. There are things that you're going to need to catch that won't even be alerted, but you have to treat every patient, every script, every fill the same. Alert fatigue is a problem, but you have to realize if you miss something, you could kill a patient. So, those trigger drugs, like Dr. Wagner said, if they're on warfarin, you should be checking very carefully. And you'll get to know which alerts are more important and which aren't. But you shouldn't rely on the alerts. You should rely on your knowledge.
Yeah, there are a lot of side effects and things that are listed that really, in the grand scheme of things, don't happen as often as I think we think they do. For example, using SSRIs with linazolid, and they say, oh, your drug interaction alert comes up saying this can cause serotonin syndrome. Well, maybe that happened in 4 patients total out of all phase 4 clinical studies, and you're like, really? Do I have to pay attention to this? And so that's where Dr. Bell was saying some of the alerts you're going to realize this isn't really that big of a deal and I can go ahead and pass it by. And then the other alerts where maybe you have overlapping SSRIs and you have to appropriately taper them and the patient didn't know that. That may be a duplicate therapy you should probably pay attention to. And so there's certain alerts that you'll figure out that, yes, I absolutely need to pay attention to, and some of them are just, I can go ahead and separate that out and I can pass that by and the patient will be okay.
And while alert fatigue is a real thing, they are there for a reason. And so just dismissing them is not something I would recommend if you don't know if they're important or not, because ultimately your license is on the line.